You want it? We have it. The hottest mortgage and real estate strategy broadcast in the nation. A Smarter Way Home with your host, Danielle Boote and Victor Bals. 50 years combined experience, ranked in the top 1% in the nation for home loan originations 2020. Promise to expand your knowledge, utilizing creative mortgage financing and home buying strategies. Build a bridge for a better quality of life. Get your brain cells firing for a smarter way home. And welcome to another episode of A Smarter Way Home. Modern mortgage and home buying strategies for our consumers and real estate professionals alike. My name is Victor Bals, loan officer over 20 years. And with me today is my wonderful partner, my co-host, loan officer extraordinaire, Mrs. Danielle Boote. How are we today?
Good morning, Victor. I am fabulous. How are you?
It's another day in the big city. It's actually kind of warm here in Detroit, Michigan on a January.
I know. It's a little over 32 degrees, which feels balmy.
Yeah, ready to open the pool. But so anyway, we got a pretty exciting show today. And Danielle, why don't you introduce our guest and our topic, please?
Yes. It is my pleasure to introduce Todd Arnold, the owner of TNT Inspections, is with us today. Todd is a personal friend of my husband and I for, 25 years, honestly. Yes. I don't even remember. It's been a really long time. And he is an expert home inspector. He has got a very long background, and I don't even have his bio in front of me, so I'm shooting from the hip here, so you can jump in, Todd. Yep. You know, but Todd used to be a building inspector.
Yes.
For several Oakland County communities over the years.
Yes.
Opened his own home inspection business. Home inspection kind of became a thing about 25 or 30 years ago, took his experience and focused it on residential home purchases. So a home inspection is a really big part of a real estate transaction. Basically what a home inspection is an impartial opinion of from an expert third party about the condition of the home that someone is buying to get a quick snapshot of where that home is in its current state prior to a buyer making a decision on purchasing this house.
Well, welcome aboard, Todd, and we're glad to have you here.
Thank you, Vic.
Well, and as we get started, though, but first of all, before we dig into home inspections, let's dig in a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about you, how you came into it, what areas do you service, and let us know Todd a little bit.
Okay. My name is Todd Arnold, and I'm a third-generation builder. My grandfather built homes back in Columbus in the late 1800s, and my dad was a builder, and his dad was a builder, and I started working in the business at a young age. Mm-hmm. I started doing rough carpentry at 17 years old and built a lot of custom homes for the Campo family, big $1 million homes, Villa Fantasia, pools and houses, you name it. It was pretty complicated construction. Went on from there to building homes for the Jonas. They had a subdivision behind Weight Watchers and proceeded to develop a subdivision at 19 years old. And it took off from there, and we developed subdivisions. My first home as a 19-year-old was the boss's daughter's house, a $750,000 house. And it was complicated and it was challenging.
Okay, so you say you were you worked at the county as an inspector for the counties. Explain a little bit about more of that there.
Yeah, so I was became a building inspector at 27 years old, and I worked for the city of Wixom. I inspected, reviewed plans for construction for the hotels, Ford Motor Company, Chevy Creative, where they hand build all of the race car motors, General Motors, where they converged 7 hydromatic facilities into an R&D facility.
Okay, so question there. So you inspect. Are you inspecting to building codes? What are you inspecting?
Yes. So when I'm, as a municipal inspector, I'm inspecting to it'd be the code that is adopted by the state of Michigan for the construction of it. So it gets a little interesting with the crossover in my business in that aspect, because basically a home inspection, home is built to a standard, And when an inspector is looking at it, they have to understand what the standard is that they're looking at and take into effect that there's different standards for different years that things are built.
So a residential property that was built in, for instance, 1980
right.
is not going to be up to the same codes as a house built in 2021.
Exactly.
And that's acceptable.
Yep.
Although, certainly it's wise for a homeowner to update the home and bring some of those current safety features in.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what
So you're not going to inspect a home today and, to today's standards.
correct.
It's going to be, looked at for health and safety, but also, and kind of encapsulated into the era the home was built.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's continue on. So you worked in Wixom for the municipality, and then where did you go from there? And what areas do you serve?
Yep. So where I went from there is in the early days of like 1994, I started doing inspections for friends and family, because I'm an inspector. So
Because they know a guy.
they know a guy, and I was a guy. So and then it just took off like a juggernaut. And by 2010, we were doing, I'd say, on average, 100 homes, and we also had 60 million in construction loans that we were overseeing for 6 different banks until the meltdown. When the meltdown happened, we transitioned mainly into inspecting commercial and home commercial and home properties. And at that point, I was basically had 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
I was inspecting homes, and I was working for the city. So I'd work 4 days at the city, and I'd do 9 inspections from Friday to Sunday. And
And you broke off, and you just do now. You only do residential homes.
No. I've got many spokes of the wheel, but I do residential homes as one of them. So in 2013, I left the city. I decided to take early retirement and
How's that working out for you?
get out of Dodge.
He doesn't look retired.
Oh man, no, yeah. Well, yeah,
So what areas do you serve?
yeah. So depending on the client, I've had clients that have gone as far as Muskegon, South Bend, Niles, Tawas up north. But, this is somebody that, was willing to pay to put me on the road for 15, 20 days.
Where's your bread and butter? Where do you mostly do your business?
Yeah, locally, I will basically Flint, out to St. Clair Shores, on some high-end houses, but
In Livingston County.
yeah,
of course.
Livingston County, Ann Arbor, all the way out to Fowlerville area. Yeah, but I do a lot of commercial in Lansing, and then I do a lot of commercial like east of here, like where Berkeley, Ferndale, where
Which is interesting because most home inspectors don't have any commercial experience.
exactly. Yeah, they
So you bring a unique set of skills
yeah,
too.
absolutely. So
to
I've
the
helped
table.
do a lot of redevelopment, even in Livingston County, with the Citizens Building and a number of construction projects going on here, all the way up and down Grand River. I do a lot of these small businesses when they're buying a commercial building, and their lender typically will point them to me. We do a lot of work with lending institutions here in the county, and they point them to me to say, you know what, you need to know exactly what's going on in the building. Call Todd, and let him guide you.
Okay, so why would a consumer buying a residential home, why do I need an inspection? My father's going to come over, and he's going to tell me, he's built a couple homes. He knows.
Right.
What would be your objection handler there? How do you discuss that with a person that wants to have a buddy do it?
I'm okay if the buddy comes, but an experienced set of eyes is wise, because the buddy might not know about electrical panels, Federal Pacific electrical panels, how they're a fire hazard. They might not know about the life cycle of different things, what the cost of certain, a furnace, an AC, a roof. And we have a vendor list that we give to our client that, if we need a roof quote, he will send it over to you that afternoon. He'll satellite it and send over a quote and say, yep, it's $12,000. Here's the proposal. Send this in. We've got, I have very unique relationships with a lot of the contractors in the area that I can call them and say, this is what the problem is. And, help me out with this. Give me a quote on it. Give me some solutions for it. So the network of people I have surrounding certain scenarios can help a client decipher whether this house is going to hurt them physically or financially.
One of the things that I heard over the years to describe a home inspector is you would describe the home inspector as a general practitioner.
Exactly.
The home inspector has to be an expert in all facets of the home, which, as you mentioned, heating and cooling, electrical, plumbing, structural,
Yes.
roofing, okay, and looking at drainage issues outside that can impact the home. There's hundreds of things that you are an expert in.
Yes.
If you went to your general practitioner, you had a health problem, you're first going to go to your primary caregiver, right,
Yes.
for as a doctor, but that doctor is then going to refer you to a specialist.
Right.
Okay? So if you go to the doctor and they say you got a heart problem, you're going to go to a cardiologist next.
Right.
That's your specialist. The home inspector is going to look at everything in a very broad manner, and they're going to then, if there's a problem, be able to say, we're going to bring in the heating and cooling specialist. We have a furnace problem, or you're right, we have a roof problem.
Yeah.
The problem with friends and family over the years is you may get a brother who's an electrician. Well, that's great, but he doesn't know probably all the other subspecialties that you're also an expert on.
Exactly. You might not even know about vermiculite, and that's going to be a $10,000
Louisiana
problem.
Pacific siding.
What the hell is vermeg? What'd you say?
vermiculite?
Is that the stuff in the wood siding that you were talking about?
No.
What is that? What is vermiculite?
Vermiculite is a insulation that was mined out of Libby, Montana, which is the largest Superfund site in North America. It has transites, which are asbestos, and what happens is they are very airborne, and they
Really?
Yes.
So when did they put that in homes? It was
like
20s
to
20s to
55.
50s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So it looks, you know what vermiculite is? Sometimes you see it in potting soil, right?
Yeah.
It's a little, it almost looks like styrofoam.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. So now anything, for instance, in current
I
potting
thought it was styrofoam. What the hell are they
No.
putting styrofoam in here for?
Exactly. Current vermiculite, like in potting soil, is not going to be the one that came out of Montana, but what was put in these homes, it's all over. Like in Redford, Livonia, the Detroit market, the
Everywhere.
older parts of Oakland County, they actually put it in the attic as insulation, and it is fibrous, but it is loaded with asbestos.
Well, I got to digress here a little bit because I always thought a home inspector went over there and it told you what's wrong and it looks like the roof is bad, that's bad, and then it was up to me, the homeowner, to go get all these quotes. But I need all this stuff in 48 hours or 24 hours so I can make a decision if I want to move forward on this home.
Yes.
I never realized that if there's a bad roof, you've got a roof guy that can give us a quote satellite and probably have it same day.
Yeah.
I'm assuming so me as a consumer can make a good financial decision if I should move forward or not. I never even thought of that aspect of a home inspector.
Well, one of the interesting things, though, for buyers is, you're right, especially in this market, let's talk about market conditions a little bit. Buyers are looking at a lot of homes. They're in multiple bid situations, and finally they get an offer accepted.
Exactly.
They're excited, they're scared, and they're very stressed. And they may have not even looked at this home twice. Okay, so gone are the days where that buyer gets two looks at a house.
Or I want to think about it.
Right.
That's gone.
So the home inspection is the only opportunity that the buyer has to be in that home for a few hours.
Right.
So not only do they need to know the condition of the home, they need to spend time in it, measure rooms, measure windows, all of those important things. But then if something pops up, they have to decide very quickly. Yes, we knew the roof was older. Are we willing to take this on? Yes or no? And are we going to potentially renegotiate with the seller in this market where there's a line of buyers on the sidewalk waiting? So sometimes we have seen, and I'm sure you have seen it as well, we have seen more deals fall apart in the last year due to home inspection.
Yes.
Because of something with the house. And sometimes it's not even a big thing. Right. Sometimes the buyer gets in there for a few hours and goes, hey, this is not what we were looking for. We're out, even if there's not a major defect in the home, because traditionally you as the inspector do not pass or fail the home.
No, I do not. No.
Your job is to look at it in its current condition, put the report together with photos,
Yes.
and then let the buyer decide, is this the right house for you? So we were chatting before the episode started. So I'm going to bring a personal story into our episode today. Well, my daughter and her husband recently purchased a home. Mm-hmm. They have been looking for homes for a few months, and they hired Todd twice in the last couple months. The first house he inspected, I don't know, October, right. I think it was something like that, was a nice home, and the house needed a little bit of TLC, and the kids knew it, but they weren't afraid of it. So at the day of the inspection, they had painters there, they had flooring contractors there, and they knew, okay, if we're going to buy this house, here's what we're going to do before we move in with the kids. Well, Todd has amazing technology to support his inspection practice and uses a drone to inspect the roof. So the house that first house, I believe it had a newer roof.
It did, yeah.
But it had a really unique chimney structure that came off one end of the house. Honestly, it kind of seemed like the fireplace was installed after the house was built, because it was only in the basement. There was no fireplace on the first floor. And it had this massive chimney structure. Well, through Todd using the drone, he was able to get pictures of the top of the chimney cap, which led him to understand that there was a major defect with the chimney, which then made him pay closer attention to the inside of the house. And there was because of the chimney problem, there was actually damp drywall in the master suite on the second floor.
Yeah, just a small spot that alerted me that we've got
deeper problems.
A very deep problem. And in this situation, the kids actually didn't say no to the house. They went back to the seller and said, hey, there's a problem here, and we want you to figure it out and fix it. And the house needed a little TLC in other areas, which brought up some red flags. But in the end, the seller wouldn't negotiate,
right,
and the kids walked away from the house, thankfully. So we were very, very grateful. But you look at that and go, wow, 10 years ago, we did not have home inspectors with drones, because sometimes roofs are inaccessible.
Exactly.
Sometimes they're too steep, or sometimes there's snow and ice on them and you can't walk them safely, or sometimes in the summer they're too hot to walk on a roof because you'll damage the shingles. So with this drone technology, you've got so much more insight.
It's like 14 megapixels. It's like 4K, and I can zoom in on the actual roof and look at the granules on it and see if there's cracking. In this case, I was able to bring the drone in between two limbs of a tree and get some photos of get photos of the defects on the chimney. We're talking a $12,000 chimney reconstruction with cultured stone all the way down, going 3 stories up. Wow. It was massive.
Wow. How many drones did you go through before you got to be an expert on
2.
Yeah. I mean, like you got to go to school for that, don't you? I mean, you can play with it a little bit, but to become an expert, when you think about that and all the inspections you've done in 25, 30 years, you go, this is just crazy.
It's how to do it now.
Well, let me, so we backed out of that house. How much does a home inspection run? What is the range for a home inspection? Ballpark.
I'm going to say for normal between, I'm going to say $350 up to $650.
And do you do well in septic as well?
I am certified in both. I only do well at this point.
Okay, and so there's additional charge for a well and or a septic generally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so from my chair, looking at your daughter's situation, that $350 was the best money she ever lost.
Yes,
because it could have cost her a ton of money.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So the good news is they ended up finding another house in December. Todd came back out and inspected that one. Home was in much better condition. A couple minor concerns, but we had the sellers were awesome people, and for the minor things that Todd was concerned about that the kids took back to them, they took care of it.
Yeah.
The kids know exactly what they're getting into, and they'll be moving in a couple weeks.
Wow.
So.
And it's a nicer home.
Much nicer home. Yeah, better
absolutely.
value for them in the long run.
Yeah.
So their patience paid off. But that home inspection is just so critical for buyers. And I think that that's going to be even more so in 2022 because I think, interest rates are going up. We're waiting for the spring market to begin and have more listings.
Yes.
It's going to be an interesting year, and that home inspection is going to play a really pivotal part. The other thing that I think is important for buyers to understand is in the state of Michigan, there is no licensing requirement for home inspectors.
So I could be a home inspector.
Yep.
What do I gotta do?
You print a business card and say you are a home inspector, or Uncle Billy, Uncle Billy with a
Barstool Billy can even be
Barstool Billy could even be a home inspector.
Yeah.
If you
Have your friends give you some Google reviews, you're off to the races.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Really?
No.
No. So here's the thing that buyers need to understand. Sellers in this market are going to have to discriminate, right?
Yes.
Against how they're going to negotiate with a buyer if something comes up at the inspection. If you have your uncle, father, brother, sister, mother, whatever, walking through the house to give you their opinion, that's not going to bode well because there won't be an official report.
Correct.
Now, even though there is no licensing in the state of Michigan, Todd, for instance, is a licensed builder in the state of Michigan.
Yes.
He is insured.
Yes.
He also has multiple certifications that are
Yes.
recognized nationwide.
Yep.
ASHI, which stands for American Society of Home Inspectors, is one of them.
Yeah.
What's the other one?
My NRPP, which is a radon, and then I'm ASHI ACI, which is ASHI certified inspector.
So you do radon as well? Because that's popping up everywhere.
That's
Everybody
big.
wants a radon test. So you
Yeah.
complete that during the home inspection
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
if
there
if it's requested, there would be an additional charge for that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's optional,
Yep.
but obviously highly recommended. So, you have to look at that and go, okay, as a seller, are you going to negotiate with a serious buyer that you're in contract with if they don't have a legitimate inspector out there?
Okay.
And becoming an ASHI inspector, becoming an ASHI certified inspector takes years of experience,
Yes.
testing in order to do that. So it is not, everybody can't be an ASHI certified inspector. So there's other professional organizations as well. ASHI is the most notable one. They're based out of Chicago. You can go to their website and find that, yes, you can verify that Todd is certified there. There are states that have home inspector certification. Michigan's toyed with it a couple times in the last 20 years, but it never goes very far.
Well, we actually, so I'm part of a group that actually has a bill that's place-marked in the House of Representatives. If licensing does become a thing, we have established license guidelines so that it's not just willy-nilly Uncle
Right.
Billy can do anything kind of thing. It is to the standard of my peers.
Right.
Yeah. So
You're fighting the fight, man.
I'm in it. I'm in the
Yeah.
trenches with
Wow.
with all the guys.
Well, hey, wait, I got a quick one here. I'm just thinking in this extremely competitive market, we're seeing buyers put in offers waiving home inspection. And to me, that's pretty risky.
Very risky.
I'll say two words.
What's that?
Financial suicide.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Just like that deal.
Yeah.
$12,000. Nobody has $12,000 when they're putting 20,000 over asking
And
that
here-
they can pull out of their pocket to fix
Here's
something.
the thing right now, okay?
Yeah.
You may think it's a $12,000 repair, but home buyers are going to have a very difficult time finding a contractor
Yeah.
that would probably do that repair at a reasonable cost. I mean, I'm willing to double down right now based on what we're experiencing in our personal life, with contractors and things. I think you're going to see prices go up 25 to 50% in the next year due to inflation because everybody's too busy. So why would they charge you 12? If you're in desperate situation, they're going to charge you 18 to 20,000.
Right.
And yeah, you're looking at first-time home buyers that don't have a lot of cash. For instance, my daughter and her husband, they're second-time buyers,
Right.
but they're a young couple with two young children. Both of them are working. got a house to sell situation.
Right.
I mean, they did a lot of work to their other house. They're not inexperienced second-time buyers,
Right.
but they're still not prepared
No,
for a massive problem such as this, which, I could have seen that being a $25,000 repair once you opened up the drywall and realized that there was mold in the wall. And
Well, I bought a home warranty. Doesn't that cover everything?
No.
Oh, great question. No, doesn't cover any of that.
No. And there was a $30,000 deck that we're not even bringing
Oh,
into the
yeah.
conversation.
Yes.
That needed
Yeah,
to
the
be
decks were
demolished.
rotted and yeah. My husband put his hand on the railing on the front porch and the thing fell off.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
So not getting a home inspection is like playing Russian roulette with
It
6
really
bullets in the
is.
chamber.
It really is. I mean,
is,
your home is your biggest investment. So you need to have a professional. And here's the thing that's important for a home inspector. It's the level of communication you bring to the table.
Yeah.
You have to stay cool, calm, and collected, present the facts, and you have to communicate with the buyer at a level that they understand.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're not.
And you could be dealing with the fathers and the mothers and the uncles and the brothers,
I do,
right?
yeah.
So you have to be able to communicate with them respectfully, communicate with the buyer, and try to get everything through. And what's cool, talk a little bit about your reporting system and how that's changed in the last 10 years.
Yeah. So we were talking about this a little bit before we started the podcast, but years ago when we went full time, we would do books with carbon copies, and I would use
NCR paper.
Yeah, exactly. So I would use a recorder, and then any photos that would be taken, I would have to have them developed.
Oh, yeah. The photo mats.
You went to
yeah.
Arbor
Yeah,
Drugs,
photo mats.
CVS.
for the 1 hour photo. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
So, and then I would put them on a piece of paper, and I would write a description and make copies of them. And it was a whole thing. So we have evolved from that to now we're in full digital mode where everything is captured on a tablet on site. The drone photos are incorporated into the report as I build it. And then infrared photos are also incorporated. So we use
Infrared photos. Why would a consumer need an infrared photo?
Oh, this goes back to Danielle's story. So I was standing across the room and I saw a spot the size of a baseball up against that chimney. So then I broke out the moisture meter, which was, it was key here because then I could track the moisture all the way down the structure.
So you're actually looking inside the walls.
I am, yeah.
And the consumer probably wouldn't understand that. So you point something at a wall and you can check what?
I can check for variations in temperature.
So that would go to say that this may be low in insulation or there's a hollow spot back there?
Or it's wet.
Or it's wet.
Wow,
or,
that's pretty. And
or-
Barstool Billy can't see that.
No, that's a basically a sixth level of, I'd say tying in with the visual, but it's a sixth level that you can measure heat coming out of your heating system to make sure that you're getting ample.
Well, what about
heat.
the vents outside and the soffits? You can actually measure heat coming out of there to see how much leakage there is?
I can look at the exterior of the building and look at basically leakage like you're talking about.
Well, I'm sorry, this is taking me down another rabbit hole because I'm thinking when we're speaking of insulation, a lot of times people add insulation, they add it to the roof, but they fill up the soffits and now we get mold.
Yes.
Right? Can you explain that? What happens up there?
Yeah. Yes, I can. So what happens is you have moisture in the envelope of the building, and everybody runs a humidifier. Sometimes you're in a moist area, you might have a crawl space, and moisture naturally comes up out of the ground into the structure. Sometimes we add moisture with a humidifier, and if we don't have proper ventilation to dissipate the moisture out of the roof, hence blocking the soffit vents with the insulation, then it just sticks to the roof deck, the moisture, because it can't go anywhere, and it creates fungi, mold.
The mold.
Yeah, the mold up in the attic. And I just recently did a job where we had a crawl space. It was not encapsulated. The bathroom it was a duplex. The bathroom was dumping into the crawl space.
You mean the venting was?
No.
Oh.
There was a plumbing leak.
The
Okay.
bathroom was dumping into the crawl space.
So moisture.
Yeah, so I had the agent flush the toilet and woof, down it comes.
Oh my
And I'm just like, oh, here we go. So we got all this moisture, and then it drives up into the attic. that has already been repaired. I'm seeing a certification from 6-7 years ago and certified, and I'm looking at mold all over everything again.
Wow.
So, and I'm assuming you've got a mold guy
Yeah,
that can give a quote to
Yeah.
figure out how are we going to remediate this here.
exactly how it needs to be done.
Well,
And
I mean, you can remediate the attic, for instance,
Yeah.
but like the house you just described, if you don't take care of the cause of the moisture problem in the
Repeat.
first place, it's just going to happen again and again. And isn't there a age group of homes that it's more common with? Because didn't we start building homes in the 90s to be like airtight? That was
did.
actually a thing back in the 90s where they wanted to, improve insulation, improve energy efficiency. So they built these boxes that didn't allow airflow. I
Exactly.
mean, the 90s isn't
were
that
too
long
tight,
ago.
yeah.
The houses were built too tight and then have had to have some healthy modifications to allow for airflow to be vented.
Yes, yeah. So there's a gentleman that is an expert in this field, Joe Stiebrick, and he's building science is his background, and he does it for massive buildings and stuff like that. And
Wow.
he talks about this. On the older homes, air can move in the walls and through it either direction. And as we tightened up the homes, like Danielle's saying,
Wrapping them in Tyvek and more insulation, more insulation.
exactly, caulking, air sealing. What happens now is the air is not moving in and out of the structure. So now we're trapping it, whether it be in the wall assembly or in the house, and we're not getting the right air changes. And the tighter we make them without the right air changes, the more problems that we're faced with mold, water damage, rot, dry rot.
Because it can't breathe.
Can't breathe. Yeah. Yeah. So this, an inspector needs to know. Uncle Billy doesn't know this, and he's never trained with, Joe. And
Wow.
yeah.
No,
We're going to have to fire Barstool Billy here.
Yeah. And one other thing with home construction is that sometimes products are recalled.
Yeah.
There have been massive furnace recalls. That was a big thing.
Yeah,
Was in the 80s.
Carrier,
Carrier,
and
Lennox, the
2000
G series.
2004.
And then the siding thing.
The siding, Louisiana Pacific had massive siding recalls. And here's one of the problems that I know we've seen in this area. So Louisiana Pacific first came out with a fiberboard siding in the 90s.
Yes.
It was put on all of the nice houses. Well, the over the years, the siding can be painted. It doesn't need to be painted frequently, but it takes on moisture, delaminates.
Yes.
And there was class action lawsuits. So many homeowners were able to participate in the class action lawsuit, get some money back, and were supposed to replace the siding.
Right.
But how many of them really replaced the siding? They took the money and ran, ended up selling the house a few years later, knowing that it had the recall siding. So the next buyer has no recourse and is potentially going to buy a home that has defective siding that's not going to last. And
Wouldn't that somehow be on a seller disclosure?
No. And basically what Danielle's talking about is like a $17,000 to $30,000 situation where the siding has failed on the house.
And I think over in Heartland and San Marino subdivision was a lot of those homes back in the day, because I remember that was part of the negotiation. They wanted all the siding ripped off, and put that back on.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So, those are really big things that buyers aren't going to know.
Because our buyers, many buy with emotion, not financial sense. Oh, it looks good.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Same with septic systems. They had a domed system, and they would allow them.
A domed septic system?
There's a domed plastic septic system, and they allowed them to do for every foot of this, they would allow them a 2-to-1 ratio, and they found out quickly that they all failed. And whenever you see this dome system, you definitely know that the septic is going to have a lot of issues, because it goes basically goes anaerobic, and the water can't drain out of it. It creates like a sludge material. So you have septic, you have well issues, you have roof issues, you have siding issues, electrical issues, plumbing issues, structural issues, and you've got a lot of different things that can happen in a home. You've got block walls, that were built in the 40s that are non-reinforced, that they push, and you get horizontal cracking from frost heave. You get poor mixture of concrete where they superheat and the plasticizers come out, and Then the top layer just scales right off. Plumbing issues with PEX and the fittings dezinkified and would corrode like galvanized piping, and you get no water pressure. And you've got environmental issues like up in by General Motors where they've got salt in the aquifer.
Wow, Todd, you're a real sunshine pump.
Buzz killer.
Yeah, but let me ask you this. Home inspections, legality. Do home inspections carry any legal weight for our home buyers? And the second question is once you discover something wrong with the plumbing, something wrong with the insulation, mold, is the seller required to now disclose that if our clients don't buy that home? Does anybody want to go down that rabbit hole?
I'll go there. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll hit it head on. So,
Okay.
In some cases, yes, and others, no. So let's say that the house was rented out and Mr. Sellers never lived there. He's not obligated to disclose anything, even though I tell him
Okay.
that this is what's going on. He is covered that he doesn't know anything going on because he's never lived there.
Even with the proof of a report and say, here, it's black and white.
Yeah, they'll say I have an opinion from somebody else that says something different.
You bring in another professional.
The opinion angle.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
could be Barstool Billy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've seen that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's okay. And you accept it. And other situations, yes, they might have vermiculite, and they should identify that there is an asbestos material in there or a foundation leak.
But let's say a home seller. I live in this house. I'm selling my home. You did an inspection for my buyer, and you found radon, and you found mold in the attic.
Right.
And they give me that inspection report. Am I now legally bound, ethically, I guess, to now I have to disclose that to the next buyer? Because now I know?
Danielle, I mean, you've seen it.
Here's your disclaimer. I am not an attorney, but...
I am not an attorney, but... Okay, I do believe in many cases, yes, the seller should disclose it, but most of the time, I don't think the buyer is going to give the report to the seller.
Right.
Okay, they don't have to. So if the buyer
But
just
they would if
backs
they're
up-
trying to negotiate a price reduction, right? Well, I'm
sometimes
okay.
yes and sometimes no.
Well,
You
here's I'm going to kind of jump in here. So on my reporting software, you can click on the items that you want to discuss. Create a PDF of those items only without giving them the whole report.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So
Here's our items of concern.
yes, absolutely. So then it pares it down from a 200-page report
Okay.
to a 2-page.
Summary.
Summary.
So with that items of concern list, do you also have a column where you could pop in, yep, the roof's going to cost this, the radon's costing this, and all that?
Yes.
So now you got something to go negotiate
Yes.
with if you choose to move forward?
Yes.
That is pretty cool, and I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's called.
So there's definitely,
Wait,
I think,
what's that called?
It's called create a repair list option.
okay.
CRL.
A demand list.
Yes.
I think that there's a gray area there, and it boils down to, what the seller wants to disclose.
Yes.
I mean, legally, I think they should, but could they also question it? For instance, if Barstool Billy does the home inspection, or Uncle Joe, who's a builder, and they don't have a legitimate report,
You can void that thought.
you can void that thought because
Okay.
you don't know if it's legit or not.
So here's another
Yeah.
option. You've got 4 buyers standing in line to buy the house. Buyer 1 says, I'm not buying it. They immediately go to buyer 2 and says, you're up. Do you want the house?
Right.
And then at that point, they've not modified the disclosures because they've seen the disclosures. And
Right. Okay, so let's go down to ethics. The listing agent selling the house now gets the report, finds out there's items, there's mold, there's all this. Our buyer passes. Is that realtor ethically bound to tell the new buyer and their agent that we found these things in the report? There's an ethical thing now because legally I don't think they have to, but ethically because they took an oath. Well,
there's definitely
but to
some
protect
ethics
the seller,
there,
they
but
took an oath to protect the seller.
It's the seller's job to disclose.
yes.
It's the seller's legal responsibility to disclose. So, for instance, the house with my daughter,
Yeah.
that house ended up going under contract. I haven't looked. It's probably closed by now.
Yes.
But did they disclose it or not?
Yeah.
If you're buying, as a buyer in the state of Michigan, you always are buying a house as is, and it is your responsibility as the buyer to do your due diligence and uncover any potential issues with the home.
Buyer beware.
Buyer
Always.
beware
Yeah.
always.
My job is two things: make sure that the house doesn't kill my clients physically or financially.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good angle to.
Yeah.
Well, not an angle, but that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's as
Well,
simple as
and
that.
there is home inspector liability, but the home inspector is not going to be liable to rebuild the house if something is found wrong.
Yeah.
You know, the buyer, even a home inspector doesn't have x-ray vision. You might have thermal imaging,
Yeah.
right, which gives you a good idea what's in the walls, but you don't have x-ray vision.
Yes.
And the other thing that is important to understand is Todd's in a house one particular day of one particular year during this transaction
Yes.
cycle for a few hours. If that home inspection is done and then the buyer closes 30 days later and then the seller has 60 days occupancy, it could be 90 days from the time that Todd inspected that house to the buyer gets the keys. What could happen in 90 days? A lot of things.
Straight line winds. We could be going through a drought, and then all of a sudden we go into a rainy season, and now we've got leaks that come up,
Right.
ceiling, wall, basement.
So a house is always is kind of a, let's call it a living, breathing thing.
It's a moving target.
It is a moving target, and something can happen, and that, you know, the home inspector is only there for a few hours, so he is not liable for something that happened the day after he's at the house, he or she, and then, you know, so you got to look at that legitimately and go, you know, for instance, the seller could damage something before they left, or if the, you know, here and I guess from a real estate standpoint, the seller is responsible to maintain that home until the day they leave.
Yes.
Or report back that, hey, the furnace went out, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the furnace could go out after closing, but before the seller leaves.
Well, let's just take, for example, that home had a reverse osmosis system under the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
And you got pictures in your report, client moves into the house, and hey, there's no reverse osmosis. We have proof that it was there in the report. There could be some recourse. And is there ever recourse after the fact when the client lives there 6 months and finds something and tries to come back at you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I will go out and meet with them, and yeah, absolutely. I want them to communicate with me if there's anything going on. I want to address it and make sure that, number one, I've addressed the building, and that I get to the bottom of their concern, and that they feel comfortable when I'm done. That it's either something that, and you know, and I've had situations where the seller takes Bondo on a cast iron sewer, Bondos it, paints it, and never replaces it, and it falls out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I kind of take it as you're almost a teammate on the buyer's side. With the very limited time you spend on the home, you are there for a diligence phase to help them make a financial decision based off the information you have at that particular snapshot.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm dealing with a buyer right now on a new construction that is, you know, he's very upset. The windows are leaking in this $650,000 house, and it is
Brand new construction.
brand new. I went out there the day before Christmas, and you know, I told him, you know, I'm here for you to figure this out.
Now, were you there as a home buyer inspection or for the municipality?
For the home buyer.
So why wouldn't the municipality pick up on an inspection, or they don't check that?
That is something they don't check, and I actually deal very closely with the building official and all the counties and cities. They all know who I am. So when it comes to that point, I have open communication with them, and I'm able to help get it resolved. And
Wow. So
Now, were you hired by the homeowner?
I was.
Prior to the home, while the home was being built, or after they moved in and knew they had problems?
Just before they moved in, I did a final
Okay.
inspection, and this came up 10 months later that the windows leaked where they were mulled together. We brought the window manufacturer, and he couldn't figure out what was wrong with them. So we are now waiting for weather, and we're going to rip the whole wall apart to see exactly how the water's. I mean, we dumped on one of the 14-degree days. We dumped at least 200-300 gallons of water on the wall.
Wow.
You know, water, you know, washing it.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, and you were asking before the podcast, we were talking about some horror stories. And one of the things that I have seen happen the day before basically a walkthrough, the day before closing, house had major damage to the floors. The ceilings had fallen down. The wood floors were warped and raised up about a foot. The house was hit by a lightning bolt and microfractured all of the copper plumbing in it. During that time, the well driller was chlorinating the well and had turned off the well. And when he chlorinated the system so nobody would accidentally turn it back on, when he turned on the well, it repressurized the system, and it blew everything out on this $700,000 house.
Oh my
On the walkthrough, this client is ready to go to the closing table.
Wow.
Until she wasn't.
Wow. But the water made a good cup of coffee at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Nice clean water.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a great thought, though. Even if you're building a new home or buying a spec home that's in construction phase, it is still really valuable to bring a home inspector in.
It is.
I had a client once that had a brand new home, and they didn't hook up the hot water heater.
Right.
And nobody caught it. So
Right.
literally they go to get the keys to the house, move in, and they're like, there's no hot water. And there was just a piece of copper missing or whatever it was at the time. You know, you go, oops, somebody forgot it. Guess what? The building inspector missed it. The county completely missed it.
Yeah.
They got a C of O on a house that did not have hot water.
Yeah.
You would think the builder would have somewhat of a checklist as a home inspector to check that everything works.
They do to a point. You know, you get into the national builders and they do. They're a little more organized than the local builders. And I've seen it where, you know, like you're saying, a dryer vent doesn't vent out. It vents into the wall, and it never, and you know, you look at it and this is brand new house in Novi.
Well, at least the house is
Yeah.
breathing now. It's got air in there in the
Exactly.
walls.
It's not the right one.
Yeah. So it's never,
Wow.
doesn't go up and out. And I'm just like, you know, you're that close to a dryer fire. You know, other dryers where I get it on a new construction, the dryer vent's not connected to the duct.
Well,
Yeah.
Going out the
I've
roof.
done, construction loans here for 20 years. I build construction, and people say, I'm going to get a home inspection. And I'm thinking, well, and I actually frowned against it. Why would you want that? I mean, it's going to be all built to code.
Yeah, but you just need somebody else's opinion and another set of eyes.
It never dawned on me to say,
Yeah.
wow, you look at it to protect the buyer.
Yes.
And say there could be something that's missed.
This is where the problems start. And
Wow.
and this is,
Or they could, or Todd can, for instance, help with the final punch list with the builder.
Yeah, and
right.
that's-
Walk
yeah.
through the house, another set of eyes. What is getting missed?
Builders must hate you
there's-
at some point. Or they
some love it, some
Yeah.
hate it. And it just depends on how they perceive me.
Well,
and
I
whether I'm on
I
their
can
team.
imagine a builder loving it if they're going to take your information and help to build their own process.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. I've had the national builders say, Todd, that's nice that you gave us this list, but we're not required contractually to address it.
Understood.
And I say, okay, I will take my list to the building official and he'll violate you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
And he
okay.
did. And-
Really?
yeah. And some major structural deficiencies that needed to be addressed and they wouldn't. And so there's more than one way to deal with it. And my client,
Wait, so you can go into a new construction and just knowing the code, you could look at something and say, yeah, that's not right, man.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Point loads were missed where we're bringing 20,000 pounds of weight off of the roof and not hitting the foundation the way they should. The beams were misplaced. And and when I called the building official, he's like, I'm a little bit concerned that you're calling me. And I'm like, can you take care of this problem? And he's like, I'm going out there today.
Wow, because that could cost them a lot of money to make those changes.
Yeah, they had to put him up in a hotel for a month, the person buying it. And it turned into even a more major ordeal when they did their 1 year walkthrough with the drywaller because it kept cracking between the
All the
ceiling.
settling,
Yeah, and I wrote a document for the buyer to the builder, and they had to cut the ceilings out 2 feet all the way around all the intersecting partitions, remove all the drywall, clip it because they didn't clip it when they built it, and redo all the paint, 2 coats of paint, air scrubbers, clean all their electronics, clean all their carpeting, repaint the house, 3 coats plus primer, and so the builder loved me, and And basically the builder said, whatever Todd's saying, and this is what he said to the drywall, whatever he says that you're going to do, you're going to do.
Good.
Well, the liability is huge for the builder.
It is.
They screwed up, and you don't want a lawsuit on a $500,000 plus
Well,
home.
it's just
and
about-
now with new construction, I mean, the new construction homes are not cheap.
Danielle, they were
there's
in
no entry.
They were in there for a month, a group of guys
Wow.
working on it. Yeah, it was probably a solid $30,000 repair.
Oh my
Well, that's a
gosh.
little concerning too, because as getting the inventory is so low, so we need as much construction as we can.
Yeah.
But the builders can't get the labor.
No.
So
Yeah.
what labor they can do, are they rushing? Are they
Yeah.
pushing? Are they missing steps?
Well, Jim and I built a house 3.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jim's background, so he
Yes.
kind of kept an eye on construction, but we had problems with the builder was good. But his plumber, because of course something gotten delayed, so his regular plumber wasn't available to plumb our house.
Yeah.
And we still have plumbing problems 3.5 years later.
right.
I just had a plumber in about a month ago. Going, okay, what do I do with this? And stuff was done wrong. And once your tile is up in your bathrooms and the drywall's up, I mean, it looked okay to us. We walked through the house, but clearly you're emotionally vested in building this house.
Right.
It was an 18-month project from beginning to end,
Yeah.
and we didn't pay attention.
Yeah.
And, there was stuff that we should have paid attention.
Yeah.
And, my husband's a retired home inspector. So
Right.
you go, shoot, we screwed up.
Yeah.
We should have hired Todd to
Yeah.
come through,
That's-
and if I build a house in Florida, I'm thinking about this now.
Right.
Yeah.
I am going to hire an
Yeah,
ASHI inspector in
Or you
Florida.
fly-
else-
or you
I'll
fly
fly
Todd
you
down.
down there, Todd, a couple times.
Get your
during con-
bikini on, Todd. You're
absolutely.
going south.
Get
You
the
know,
Mai Tais
but-
ready.
Yeah, I need a Mai Tai.
Yeah, it looks
ready to
good
go. No. Mai Tais after the inspection, not before the inspection. But you just need, a disinterested, non-emotional third party
That's a good
to
point.
give you an opinion, on what's going on. I know how I felt.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm in the mortgage business.
Yes.
32 years. And both of my daughters and their husbands bought houses this year.
Yes.
Okay. Now you inspected Caitlin's house too in West Bloomfield.
Yeah.
You know what? I have a very hard time as a mom and a real estate investor and a mortgage professional going to a house that my children are going to buy, because I'm not going to look at it real pretty. Like the house in West Bloomfield. Oh my God. Now they love it. They love it.
I found some problems on that one
Oh,
too.
it flooded 3 times in the first month.
Yeah.
Here's what we were just talking about. With the buyer didn't get keys for 60 days.
Yeah.
So they closed in April. The sellers stayed for 60 days.
Right.
They moved in the middle of June. And we got all those torrential rains.
Yes.
Yeah.
Their first flood was on day 7 of being in the house. Their second flood was within a week and a half to 2 weeks
Yeah.
of moving in. And the third flood, they had 3 major floods within 30 days.
Yeah.
And they completely, it was a split level home.
Right.
They lost everything in the lower level. So
Yeah.
they've got to pull all the paneling down, just to dry out their lower level, which was like a walkout
Right,
situation. And I saw the house for the first time and went, why did we buy this? There was a hole in the garage roof, but they had written offers
Right.
for almost 2 months straight. They wrote 2 or 3 offers every weekend. And by the end of it, they were just like, we want a house. We'll take whatever. But I looked at it and I would have said, run. Like I told my daughter, and that lives in Howell, I wasn't thrilled that she bought the house that they did either. But, as a mom and as a parent, right? You're going to look at the house and you can see the work that needs to be done.
Well, that brings up another concern, because we're talking about inventory and anything left on the market that's been there for more than 2 weeks. Todd, take it from there. I know you got something to say about that.
Yeah. So what's happening with those houses is there's not many, I would say, people that can flip houses that are qualified and can make money at it. That boat has sailed for the most part. I am working with a guy that does about 100 a year right now. Flips.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. He's the real deal. But when you're looking at that and you're looking at the overall quality of our stock that we don't have really good stock as far as old construction, older. A lot of it needs renovated. It hasn't. No one's invested. It's not loved. It's very rare to find a home that is solid.
Well, to go to Danielle's point, because of her kid, they put in so many offers. They finally threw in the towel and said, I just want a house. And now they're taking what's left on the market, which now brings us up to those are the homes with the problems.
So with my daughter and son-in-law's house in West Bloomfield, it looked cute. It had some newer flooring. It had the gray and white paint tones.
Yes.
It had a newer kitchen.
Yep.
Had a hole in the roof. Had some
The shower.
They had shower issues in the lower shower, and you did call out the drainage problems.
Yes.
So when that torrential rain happened, it was honestly no surprise because Todd did say, guys, there's some red flags here with the drainage in the backyard. So, kudos to Todd because he did call it. It was just a matter of flipping timing with that torrential rain that we had last June.
Yeah.
But what I later found out with my daughter's house is that her home was bank owned about 12 years ago.
Yep.
So that home, when we looked at the history of the property, somebody owned it. Somebody put on that goofy addition on the back, which had some issues, and the kids knew about it. But it was a bank-owned home. So then somebody bought it and flipped it.
Right.
Put some rouge and lipstick on it, fixed some of the issues, made it look good. And then another family lived there for 7 or 8 years. But they were a big family, whole bunch of kids. They were
they lived hard in the house.
They lived hard in the house.
Yeah.
And so when my daughter and her husband moved in, it was like, then guess what? The kitchen faucet was like this.
It was wanky.
I kid you not. The whole thing
moving side to side.
Moved side to side. Yeah. So that, when you go, it looked good. It was a beautiful faucet.
Yes.
Completely installed wrong. So you could tell that house was flipped by an amateur.
Yes.
It had 2x4s under the kitchen sink holding up the granite. I was like, what the holy heck is this? It looked like a Jenga game, with a few nails and a little bit of glue. But the kids wanted the house. So the flipping thing can be a concern. And my daughter's first house in Berkeley was also a flip.
Okay.
Now that one didn't have as many overall issues, but you go, that's a huge part of the market and what buyers are now finding. It's like, okay, and again, not that it's all bad, but you kind of need to know what you're dealing with, so
Yeah, there's many sets of eyes on this that you can get that's good, especially on the older homes. On the newer homes, that was one of your other comments, and that labor is an issue, but the other thing is materials. The materials are just a nightmare to get right now. There was a time in the summer that there was over 300-400 homes that could not close because they could not get siding or siding contractors.
That's still a problem.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a buyer right now that was supposed to have been in their house in December.
Right.
And the house is almost done.
Yeah.
But we have no siding.
Yeah. Exactly.
And actually we had on our podcast a couple weeks ago the president of the Michigan Home Builders Association. And one of the things he had discussed was that hopefully the municipalities will, although it can be a problem with lenders too, but they might be able to consider giving a temp C of O for exterior items.
Like garage doors. Remember that?
You can't get a garage door, but if the house is done, you could live in the house.
Yeah.
Lock the door until the garage door comes because people need to get into these homes.
Right.
And there's lender complications, so I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole, but
there's
it's a huge problem. You go, okay, the house, I had a client a year ago that closed over 8 weeks late due to siding delays.
Right. Wow. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I had a client, it was two of them, in Ann Arbor that they couldn't close, and they had to move. They lived in a hotel for a couple months. They had to double.
That's where
move.
my clients are right now, in a hotel.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's that. There's material shortages. There's labor shortages that are affecting the new construction, and then there's we can't build them fast enough. There's municipal snags that trying to site plan approve these projects, and there's just a lot for them to develop them to get product on the ground. And basically we went a long period without construction from 2008 to 2012 without producing any houses, and that caused it's jamming everything up.
Yeah. Well, we have an opportunity to solve stuff here,
We do.
obviously. You know?
Yeah.
But we need to start wrapping up the show. We're running out of time here. Todd, how would one get a hold of you? What's the best way to get a hold of you? And do you have a website?
Yes, I have a website. It's the letter NTIS.net. So
Okay.
www.tntis.net.
And what's your phone number?
It's 810-772-1090. And that you can text, call, and you can
So, and
communicate with me
I
there.
think buyers need to be prepared. Okay. So if you are going to buy this year, have your pre-approval in hand, ready to go, all your financial documents to your lender, of course, but also be prepared and know who you want to hire to be your home inspector. One of the things that we did see quite a bit last year was inspectors getting backed up.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, we heard from many clients, I can't get the inspector out there for 10 to 14 days, when normally you could do it in 5 to 7.
right. And everybody was running on a 5-day window. And
Right.
it was,
So contracts are going to
tight.
be changed,
Yeah.
to accommodate for that. And in the busy season, don't leave it to chance.
Right.
Do your research. Yes, get real referrals from your family and friends that have recently bought homes and had them inspected. Realtor referrals are also valuable.
Yes, they are.
Because they're in the trenches. You just can't really go to the old-fashioned yellow pages or Google Home Inspector,
Right.
because
you get
they're
Barstool Billy.
they're too they're too local.
Right.
You need to know who's the players locally, who is ASHI certified,
Right.
who is experienced, and who is doing this full time, and know who you want to use.
What
so
is
you're
your
prepared.
turn times typically, or do you see a backup as well?
Normally, 5 days, but I'd say 10 days we can fit most in. Just that being said, I mean, I service about 15,000 clients and that are previous clients plus their family, is generationally. So
Okay.
it is a major tree of people that I service. I do inspections for banks for construction loans. I do service condominium complexes. I do commercial inspections with the big players in the area. And I service a lending institution out of Colorado that does a lot of the grow facilities and grow dispensaries in the area as well. So I've got my hands into a lot of things, and the key is to find out ahead of time what an inspector's turnaround time is before you put the offer in. If you do that and say, okay, earmark me, I'm putting an offer in, can you earmark me a day of within 5 days? They can slot you. And
Well, let me ask you a question here. So I'm out there. I think I'm going to buy a home. Is that a good time for me, for lack of better words, to get in bed with a home inspector and create a relationship knowing that I'm going to be out there searching?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what you want as far as an inspector goes, and then you know where you're looking with the inspector's background in that area. Like Danielle was saying, that you want somebody that knows the issues, whether it's over at the proving grounds or Demode Road where they dump 5,000 barrels of, who knows what. We want to make sure that we know what's going on in the area.
Yeah, you want somebody local, you want somebody experienced, and do not shop for the lowest price.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever, ever, ever.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, you sold me, because I never thought of some of the items I never thought about, but now.
Well, you built your last house and you've been there over 20 years now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I built the home before that. So I never thought, well, you don't need a home inspector. But now, I'm thinking about buying again, existing. But I thought, man, I need a guy like that, because now I think before I buy with financial sense, not emotion.
Yes.
You
exactly.
know, and you are the guy to have to make me make a good financial decision, or my wife is going to hang me.
Right. Exactly. And when I roll up to the job, I've got $20,000 of equipment in the truck, and I'm ready to roll out any aspect that we need to drill down and figure out exactly what's going in the house. So it's just not a clipboard and a little tester anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
no,
what closing words
Yeah.
would you have for our consumer home buyers, sellers, and or our real estate agents? What's your final words, Todd?
The real estate agents, I would say that just keep fighting the good fight to be kind and be understanding, because they know it's very stressful for everybody, the buyer, the seller, the agent, the inspector. It's a lot of stress, and everybody be kind in this situation. Buyers, the key is to do your homework, understand what you're getting into. The more you know about it, the less likely you are to have financial issues or health issues down the road.
Well, thank you very much, Todd. Danielle, any closing words for this episode? This was a great episode.
Great episode. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, thank
we
you.
appreciate your expertise. It's been a lot of fun and insightful as we get into the spring home buying season in Detroit.
Yeah.
And for my co-host, Danielle Boote, my name is Victor Bals. That was Todd from TNT Inspection. We'll see you next time here on A Smarter Way Home.